Hi there. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Follow Your Passion podcast. I'm your host, Erwin Wils. I'm a mindset and business strategist and founder of Millionaire Life Strategy. In this podcast, I'm interviewing my clients and other entrepreneurs that are following their passion and make a good living out of it. When you want to know more about me or what I can do for you, check out my website, millionairelifestrategy.com. But first, check out this episode of Follow Your Passion. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Follow Your Passion podcast. Let me introduce my guest of today. Her name is Randi-Lee Bowslaugh. Randi is a mental health advocate, author, and YouTuber. She started writing at 14 years old as a coping strategy for depression. 20 years later, she is now a mom, grandma, and thriving creative individual. Randi loves to share her passions with others through writing. In 2017, Randi published her first book about mental health awareness, Thoughts of a Wanderer. And in 2018, she published A Mother's Truth, inspired by raising her youngest who has special needs. Another of Randi-Lee's passions is kickboxing, which she has been doing for over 10 years. She was a Canadian national champion in kickboxing in 2015, competed at the World's Kickboxing Tournament later that year, and in 2016 competed at the Pan Am Games, where she received silver in her division. In 2020, she was chosen as one of the coaches for the Ontario Winter Games, where she inspired and coached young athletes. In 2017, Randi became a personal trainer. While she isn't working, she's spending time with her 2 teenage children and a grandbaby. Randi tries to speak honestly and openly about the struggles with her own mental health as a parent, wanting to ensure that no one feels alone. And that's what I love about you, Randi. Welcome.
Hello.
So, Randi, tell me about it. You started writing at the young age, it's 14 already. What made you decide to start writing?
Really, I would say I started writing younger than that, but the poems that are in my first published book are from when I was about 14. So that's why I go with then. Mental health. So writing was my escape from my depression, and it helped me kind of cope with it and manage it. So that's how it really began.
Wow. And it's actually, funny is the wrong word for that. But I recently, an interview was published about being authentic and vulnerable, how that is a strength. And I guess that writing as a tool to cope with your mental depression, it's also about being vulnerable. I guess it's about writing down your emotions and coping with it and dealing with it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. When you're writing about it, it's really raw. It's very open to whomever ends up reading it, if anybody does. I mean, you could always just write for yourself, which is how I started. But yeah, it's super emotional and very raw when you're just letting it all out.
Yeah. And I guess you didn't start with the intention to inspire others with your writing. What was the moment that you, let's say, recognized or start seeing that people were inspired by what you wrote down?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't actually been asked that one before. So when I published my first book in 2017, it was like, okay, it's published, whatever. It's something I always said I was going to do. It's done, right? And then it was probably a couple months after that people started leaving reviews and letting me know that, hey, I read this and it really connected with me. And it meant a lot to know that, other people feel this way. So that's when I went, oh, I'm actually helping. Okay, cool.
Nice. And it's funny because I'm also a lover of martial arts. I've been practicing judo for more or less 34 years. So I'm a very big fan of the martial arts, how people are able to control the body. right? And have all the special skills and stuff. So I loved when I saw that you're also into kickboxing.
Yeah.
So, but that's a whole different, I would almost say a whole different Randy, because when you're writing, it's about emotions, putting it on paper, being open, being vulnerable. If there's one thing you don't want to be at kickboxing, is being open and vulnerable, right?
Yeah, you definitely want to be very closed and shielded.
Exactly.
I've never thought about it that way before, where it is the exact opposite, because it can also be a release of emotions, but just kind of in a different way.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you release them in that way, you're not helping anybody, I guess.
Helping yourself, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you were actually got good at it as well, right? In kickboxing.
I'd say it was pretty good. I have a bunch of medals and
yeah,
and titles. Yeah, I would say I was pretty good.
So, are you still practicing on a low level or?
Not right now. So this year my body has kind of said, I'm not gonna work anymore. So unfortunately, I've had to kind of put that on a back seat, and my exercise has been much more limited this year because of physical limitations now. But maybe one day, if the doctors ever figure out what's wrong and can fix it, maybe one day I'll go back.
Yeah, I'll never say never, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Are you still working as a personal trainer?
I do have a couple of clients still. Because I've had them for a long time, so I can kind of sit on the sidelines and yell at them what to do.
So, are you currently working on a new book or your memoirs?
I have a new book actually coming out in May.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's on pre-order right now. So if you really want to go get it, you can totally order it now. I'd love it. So it's called Goodbye Too Soon. And again, talking about mental health and emotions. It's a very emotional book. So this one, it's about my brother who died by a drug overdose. And it's being released on May 20th, which will be the 2-year anniversary of his death. So I thought it was kind of fitting to pick that day.
Yeah.
And it's really written towards family members of those that have addiction. So a lot of times when I've read books, because I do a lot of book reviews, they're written for the person with an addiction, which is great. I mean, we need those too. So I wanted to take kind of a different way because it was how I was dealing with my brother having died in such a way that I had to wrap my head around. My first shock was kind of like, oh my goodness, it was suicide, which it wasn't, but he knew going into doing drugs that there's a possibility of death. And it was just a lot of emotions, a lot of thoughts to process around all of that. So I wanted to write the book for other family members who have to wrap their heads around the fact that our family members aren't waking up every morning going, it'd be great if I was just a drug addict. That'd be fantastic. I love losing my family and my job and being homeless. And that's not the case at all. So no. I wanted to write so that family members could understand that, we sometimes have to love those people from a distance. So there's a bunch about boundaries, about forgiveness for that person and for yourself for having to distance yourself from that person. There's some chapters on risk factors of developing an addiction and what the DSM-5 says about how addiction is a mental health and what the diagnostical criteria is. I go through some coping strategies, and then all sprinkled throughout the book with all of those like research parts, I sprinkle in the story of when I got the phone call saying my brother was dead. I had to deliver the news to my mom. I had to help her plan the funeral because it's really just my mom and I. She doesn't have a spouse. So helping her to plan the funeral, going to the visitations, what it was like during COVID to have to do that, the burial. And so it goes through that part as well as the research side of things.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about it, I can imagine how much of an emotional roller coaster it is. And it's what you said, a lot of books are about addictions and how to deal with it or how to get out of it or stuff like that. And I didn't do the research, but I can imagine that there are not a lot of books about the family of those addicted persons and how to deal with that. Because, I have a background as a hypnotherapist, and I always say people want to change, but not to be changed, right?
I like that. Yeah.
And if people want to change, I know hypnotherapy is going to work with them. But if they don't want to change, I don't even start with it, right? And I can imagine that if you have a family member that is addicted to drugs or anything else, that it's hard to deal with that, because it's somebody that you love. It's going downwards in this vicious circle. They can't get out of it because of the addiction. And you want to help them, but they don't want to be helped if they're too far down the road.
Yeah.
And then what you said, you have to distance yourself, but that's hard because you love that person. So I can imagine it's a very emotional struggle dealing with it.
Yeah. Yeah, you pretty much summed it all up with all the different weaves and ins and outs of it all. It's a struggle. And unless you've lived through it, it can be hard to comprehend. So I tried my very best to make it comprehensible for people who maybe are just at the beginning stages going, oh, my family member, they're addicted now. And I don't know how I'm supposed to do this. I don't have all the answers, but I do share what has worked for me. And then of course, just again, forgiveness. That was a really big part of it, especially when that family member dies. I was mad at my brother for dying. Like, I'll admit, I was very mad at him. In fact, I share this in the book. I laugh now, but it's very emotional. I share this in the book that during the burial, so I actually, he was in an urn. And so I put him down on the ground, and then we did the little service, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mom wanted everybody to go up and talk to him. And so, of course, being the good daughter I am, I went up to every person and said, you need to go and talk to Brandon now. And I said, don't talk about him. We don't want to hear you. You go and talk to him, right? So talk to the grave.
Yeah.
And so I forced everybody up there, and they said whatever. And then it was my turn. So I went up and I'm talking to him. And I got really close to the ground, and I'm talking to him. And then I start yelling at him. Not like I was trying like quiet, like whisper yelling, so that not everybody heard. I was whisper yelling at him about how he's not supposed to be dead right now, and this isn't fair. And he was supposed to get better, and he was supposed to go get help. And I wanted him around, and all these different emotions that you feel that you can't you can't tell the person anymore, and you can't fix it. There's no going back. So I'm having at him, and my godmother is walking by at the time, and she goes, are you yelling at him? I go, yeah. And then I stand up and I'm crying and I'm yelling, and I'm like, you can't tell me you guys aren't mad too. Are we supposed to be standing here right now? No, we're not supposed to be here. He's not supposed to be in the ground. And I'm just kind of going. And after that, I felt so much better though, because I kept it all bottled up for so long. So between when he died and when he actually was buried was a good month, because we had the funeral. We had the funeral in a couple of days, but my mom wanted to wait for the burial because the COVID rules were changing and we could have more people at the burial than at the funeral. Yeah. So I had all of that all bottled up for a month. Because I was being strong for my mom. I was getting things organized, calling people, doing all the things that needed to be done with insurance and whatever. And finally, I was like, everything is done. And I just went. And my aunt's like, where's your box of tissues? I'm like, I don't know. Somebody get me a box of tissues.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what I realized is it's okay to also be mad at the person. I mean, I've forgiven him now. It took a while, but there's a lot of emotions to go through.
Yeah. I can imagine, and it's amazing because if you look at the books you've written, you've written the book about your own mental depression. Yeah. You've written a book about being a mom of a kid with special needs, right? Yeah. You've now written your book about living with somebody close that has an addiction and died in the process. And on the one hand, it's beautiful that you're able to give that a voice and a face that people can relate to it and understand and feel understood as well. But on the other hand, it's amazing that it happens to you. If you know what I mean, right?
I do. It's like, how do I have so many books on these topics? They just keep coming. When will it end?
Yeah. So how is your kid currently?
Good. So the one that book is about, he has autism and he's 16 now. In December, he got his beginner's driver's license. Very scary. No, he's taking driving school now, so he'll be all right. He's in grade 11, so he's doing pretty well. It's been a lot of ups and downs though. So that book goes from when I was pregnant right up until I think it was grade 6 for him. I'm taking notes right now for, part 2. And I have to say that book, there wasn't a heck of a lot of triumphs in it. It was a lot more battles, a lot more struggles, a lot more learning. The second part, whenever it is finally finished, I'm thinking to let him go all the way through high school and do like all the teenage years together. And I totally have his permission to do it. He was in on it. He designed the cover for the book. So,
nice.
But yeah, so once he was able to, in grade 7, he went to a treatment facility for a few months, and they were finally able to do all the assessments that the school kept telling me they couldn't do. They couldn't do the psychoeducational. They couldn't do the occupational therapy. They couldn't do this. And it was just like so frustrating because I'm like, these are the things he needs in order to succeed. And you're just telling me you can't do them.
Yeah.
So when he was finally able to get those done in grade 7, it really made a huge difference. So they were able to identify that where he actually struggled with the fine motor skills, the speech delay, the learning disabilities. So, and we were then able to actually put things into place to help him. And he finally found the right medication. And there's been a lot of adjustments. Like he does all his schoolwork at home. As opposed to going to the high school with all those people and all that going on there. So you learn a lot over the years, but it definitely was a struggle. So yeah, that book, A Mother's Truth, is a lot of struggle, but it does get better.
Did you also have to do with a lot of presuppositions that people have about being autism and having a child that has autism?
Yes. So I definitely have lost a lot of friends in the past that just didn't understand that we would have to either leave an event early or I would cancel last minute because there'd be a meltdown. But you eventually meet the people that understand. So most of my friends now also have kids with special needs of some kind. So they get it when we're, canceling at the last minute or whatever. We're like, instead of going, oh, you cancel on me, we're going, is there anything I can do for you? Because I know you're canceling because something bad happened, right? Yeah. So it's really changing that perspective of you're not canceling on me because you don't like me. You're canceling on me because something went wrong with you today. So let me help you if I can.
Yeah.
And then a lot at work, where I used to work, and this was one of my biggest pet peeves of what people would say to me. So don't say this to a parent. So I would come into work some days and it would be after like a big meltdown or something the night before. And I'd just be like, oh, so exhausted or whatever. And you can kind of read it on my face. Right. And I would have people say to me, well, you're just so strong, or I don't know how you do it. Well, I don't know anything but to do it. It's my kid. What else am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And it just, oh, it bugged me so much because you're not saying anything that's helpful to me. And all you're giving me like some kind of congratulations for being a mom. Like I'm just a mom.
Yeah. I know what you mean. In the background, you see a little picture of two boys. Those are adopted. Those are my sons.
Oh, nice.
And they came at the same time. And sometimes people used to ask me, isn't it hard to get 2 adopted boys at the same time, right? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't know any better, right? I don't know if it's hard or easy or whatever. You just have to deal with the situation. It's what you have to do as a parent.
Exactly. So instead of being like, oh, I don't know how you do it, or is it hard to do it? Just be like something like, oh, I'm so glad that you were able to get your two boys.
Yeah.
That's way nicer. Or like, I would rather they said something like, huh, looks like you had a rough night. Do you need something? Right? Like, don't
Exactly.
tell me, oh, I don't know how you do it. Well, clearly I'm still standing here.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you, but how about
Yeah.
you be just a little nicer about the situation?
Yeah.
And I don't think they meant, oh, sorry. I don't think they meant any malice by it. It just is frustrating to hear.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean, and what I sometimes don't understand, especially with children with special needs, is that people start talking to you in the third person, even if the kid is present.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So I'll share a story. When my kid was in grade, I want to say 6, it might have been 5. And they had moved him to a whole bunch of different classrooms. But anyways, he was in like the 4th different classroom in what's called a section 23 class. So it's basically they take the troubled kids and they all put them together in this class. It's supposed to be great for mental health. It was the worst mistake we ever made. But anyways, live and learn. And so the school wanted to have a meeting to talk about what next steps for my son, because he was going to be transitioning back into the other school again for the following year. And I said, okay, great, we'll be there. They go, oh no, he's not supposed to come. I go, so we're supposed to talk about him without him there? Huh. Okay. I said, no, he's going to be there. We're talking about him. And then you show up to the meeting and they're talking to me about him and asking me what he would like. And he's sitting right there beside me. And it's like, dudes, he has a voice. You can ask him. And even the kids that are non-vocal, they can tell you in different ways. So give them a chance to answer before you just assume that they can't answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so frustrating.
So, but you said you're already taking notes for part 2 of the book?
Oh, of course. So, well, because part 1 only went to, like I said, grade 6. So, and we're in grade 11 now. So we got years of stuff. A lot more good things, I would say, than bad. But I mean, from grade 6 to now, there's been puberty, which I don't know how much I'll actually share about puberty, but puberty, starting high school, getting a driver's license, like all the different things that kids tend to look forward to.
Yeah, well, my kids are 14 and 15 at the moment, so they're puberty all over.
Oh, it's the worst.
Well, it's a phase, like we like to say.
It is. Their hormones have got to change, and they think they know everything about everything, but they will learn that they don't.
It's so great to hear all the parents say the same things that we think.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you are your books and stories always based on real life stories, or do you also write fictional?
So I do write some fictional stuff. I have a collection of short, scary stories that's called A Little Scare. I love all things horror. Like Nightmare on Elm Street is my absolute favorite movie. And then of course, like all scary stuff. I love it all. So I have to have scary books. I do have a list. So there's 10 short, scary stories in that book. And it's written kind of like for tweens and teens. So they're not like overly gory, but even the adults that have read it are like, those were good, like a nice, good, short, scary story. So, lots of ghoulish monster type things. And I definitely have a list for part 2 of that as well. I'm thinking to call it A Little More Scare.
Wow, amazing.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So I have a list of stories that I have to eventually get to writing, but I was writing goodbye too soon. So had to focus on that. And then I do have some kids books. And so I have a kids Christmas book, which is a little bit based on, well, it's based on a real life story, but it's definitely fictional because there's elves and magic and that kind of thing, but it's based on a real life event that happened. And then I've got Diamond the Cat, which again, is based on a real life cat. So I really like real life stuff. And you can actually, Diamond was a cat that I had for 19 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was my baby. I always used to say, well, Diamond is a girl's best friend.
Yeah.
So I made a cute little kids book. It's for like the really little kids because it's all like short rhyming things like I am a cat. I sit on a mat. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh, that rhymed too. And so it's a cartoon drawn book, but on the end page, I did like a little collage of real life pictures of her. So you can actually see her because she was adorable. And then I have Woofy. So Woofy is a stuffed dog who he lives in a classroom and the kids take turns taking him home for adventures. And so he's going to be a series. So I have the first one published right now. The second one's written. My kid is doing the art and he's taking forever. It's been written for a year now and he's got me like 3 of 10 pictures, but heaven forbid I remind him. So the first one that's out, it's Woofy goes to the hospital and he goes to the hospital with a little boy. He has to get his tonsils out and Woofy helps him to be very brave. Well, he goes and does that. So,
nice.
Yeah. And then I have journals and stuff too.
Yeah. So you get a lot of inspiration out of real life, right?
I really do. Like when I first started answering your questions, that question, I'm like, yeah, because I got kids' books and stuff. But then I'm thinking, I'm like, oh wait, but a lot of my kids' books are based on real life.
Yeah, nice. So, is there somebody in your field of expertise that you admire?
I'm sure there probably is, but off the top of my head, that's a great question. Admire. I really I wouldn't pick one specific person. I really admire like pretty much any indie author. So anybody who self-publishes, because it's hard well, I mean, not that it's not hard to be traditionally published. I'm saying indie publishing only because the marketing side of things, it's so hard. But anybody really that can put words to paper and feel confident enough to publish it in whatever format they do, they got some gumption. So really anybody like that who's willing to put it out there, whether it's a big hit or it ends up being a flop, it takes a lot of courage to put it out there. So no one particular name is coming to mind, but I would say everybody has a little something to give.
Yeah, definitely. Nice. So I saw that you're also like to speak, right?
Love it, clearly, right?
But it's one of men's biggest fears, right? Public speaking, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So is it different energy when you're speaking as when you're writing, or do you think there are a lot of similarities?
No one has ever asked me that. You got some great questions I haven't come across, and I've done a lot of interviews. I'm going to say it's a little bit different and a little bit the same. So when I'm speaking, obviously there's people around me to either hold the conversation like with you, or if I'm talking in front of a group of people, I have to be a little more lively to keep attention. When I'm writing, I'm focused and there's nobody I have to conversate with other than maybe myself. So I tend to put headphones in, I listen to music, and I just kind of focus. But at the same time, I think the energy is the same because when I write, I try to write when I'm in the mood to do so. So when I'm like really going and excited and I've got these ideas, and I'm very fidgety. And so it's similar energy, but it's not the exact same.
Yeah, I totally get what you say, and it's wonderful that you said that you put in earphones and put on some music to focus. Because if I compare myself with my spouse, when I was learning at a young age, I love to put on music in the background, and study. Because when it was silence in the room, and I would study for 10, 15 minutes, I got distracted, right?
Yes.
And I was looking for something to do, while when there was music playing, I didn't get distracted. maybe there was those mini distractions, but then you heard the music, you listened for a while, and then you went on again. While if I look at my spouse, when she's studying, it has to be quiet. And it's the same when we go to bed and we had our radio on sleeping mode, right? And I would put on music for like 15, 30 minutes and then it went off. And within 10 minutes, I would be fast asleep, right?
Yeah.
My wife just listens 30 minutes to music until it is out, and then she can start sleeping. So
that's
it's
great.
totally different. So
I know it's amazing how different people are. Just like my kid, he sleeps with headphones on, and I'm not talking like nice radio sleep music, like blaringly loud screamo music, and that's what he sleeps to.
wow.
And then my husband, he can pass out in like a second to nothing. I have to be all snuggled up, totally dark. I put just a tiny little bit of like instrumental, gentle music on. I have to be covered all the way up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well,
weird.
it changed with my wife when we put on some of those meditative music, right? That you can't sing along with.
Yeah.
But then she could also get at ease. But with normal music, she was just listening to the music and she sang in her head, and she couldn't sleep. While for me, it was like relaxation. Like I was studying with music as well, right? So it was a way of easing the mind.
Always have music on. And I have like different playlists for different moods. So like a lot of what I was listening to when I was writing Goodbye Too Soon on Spotify, there's a Skillet playlist. So I was listening to that a lot. When I was writing like my scary stories and stuff, I was listening to Panic at the Disco. And so it's just like, it depends what I'm writing. And then I pick the music and I go with it.
Nice. So do you actually create a playlist for the type of book you're writing, or?
I haven't had to yet. Spotify already has some pretty good ones made. So I tend to just pick a band and go with it. And then they throw in other bands or whatever. So, but I do have like my playlist that I just have like all my liked songs. So if I don't know what I want to listen to, because I'm very eclectic, my playlist has anything from show tunes to country to rap to rock. Like it has a lot of wide variety. Yeah. So sometimes I'll just throw that on and I'm like, okay, let's listen to some random whatever pops up.
Nice. So when you're writing, of course it's a very creative process, right? But do you plan books or titles or what the book is about, or do you use your creativity and let's say, oh, I got this idea, let's write a book about it?
Yeah, usually that one, the latter one. So, like with Goodbye Too Soon, I knew I wanted to write a book about Brandon, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to put in it or where I was going to go with it. I knew I wanted about Brandon. I knew I wanted people to understand that those with addiction are humans. That's all I knew going into this book.
Yeah.
And so I just went, and then as I'm going, I'm like, oh, this makes sense. And then I'll jot down notes going, okay, later in the book, I should really touch on this point. Didn't plan it out ahead of time, but as I'm going, things kind of pop in. With the kids' books, I mean, they don't really need much plan at all. I have an idea and they're so short that it kind of is just one little quick thing. But for the most part, I have just like the general concept, like for the scary stories, I will see something randomly and I'll go, oh, that will make a great story. And I'll write it down. So like I have a story that I'm writing about cats who murder. And it's because my cats went and laid on me. And you know the unwritten rule about cats, right? If they lay on you, you can't get up. So I'm like, oh, that's going to make a great story. So I just kind of jotted down the note, this is going to be what it is. And when it's finished writing, then I'll know where the story actually went.
Yeah. So Sometimes people ask me how many hours a week I work, right? And I honestly have to say I don't know, because in my
Yeah.
mind it's not 24/7, because when I'm sleeping I'm not working, right? But for the most of the time, when you're thinking about it, is it work or isn't it, right? What is the definition of work? Is it when I'm sitting at the computer typing, or when I'm walking the dogs and I'm creating new ideas or stuff like? Is it also part of work, right? You can't
Good point.
measure it. But how's that for you? Do you take separate time for business, so to speak, or is it all over the place like it is in my case?
Yeah, it's all over the place. So I do have some clients that like I write blogs for. So obviously there are certain deadlines that have to be met,
Yeah.
but I still kind of just do them whenever. Like I don't go, okay, this is the time that I have to sit and do this. This is the time I have to sit. I do it whenever. Like sometimes I'll be checking emails and watching TV because whatever. Yeah, no, there's no set time. I mean, obviously, if I'm doing interviews, then there's a set time, but interviews happen whenever you can book them in.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, no, I'm like you. It's kind of free flowing.
Yeah. It's I had this interesting discussion on LinkedIn recently, that somebody was talking about work, right? When people follow their passion, um, they it's a bad thing if it becomes work, because people are afraid of losing the passion for it.
Yeah.
And I answered that it has to do with the definition that people have about work, right? Because for me, it's I love what I do and people are willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right. So is it work? Well, if you want to call it work, perfect. But I'm doing what I love to do. I love to inspire people. I love to help people. I love to empower people. And they're willing to pay me for that. So what's better to do, right?
I totally agree. Like if all I could do all the time is writing in interviews and I didn't have to worry about anything else, that would be the life. Like, and I wouldn't call it work, but it would be in a sense because yeah, if people are willing to pay, then I don't have to worry about the other stuff. And that would be the job. That would be work. But no, it's just fun.
Yeah, exactly. So in your is there a certain moment that you in your writing career or professional career that comes to mind that you are very proud of yourself?
Good question. I would say, okay, so I also have a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
And well, it's called the Write or Die Show, in case somebody wants to go check it out. And when I hit 100 episodes, that was kind of like that was a big deal. It was a big milestone hitting that 100 episodes because so many people start podcasts or shows and they don't even make it past 10. So to hit 100, I was like, oh my gosh. And that also meant that I had 100 guests on. So I met 100 different people from all over the world. Like it was so cool to finally hit that. So I think I'm at like 136 or something now. So it'll keep going.
Nice. Yeah, I recognize what you're saying, because I started this podcast April last year.
Okay.
And the first season I had 50 episodes. And reaching that 50 mark, was also like an achievement. Like, wow, I've interviewed 50 people, 50 different guests.
Yep.
And it's amazing. So it was a nice moment for me to close down season 1. And now I'm doing season 2. So let's see how far we can get this time.
I love it.
Yeah.
I know. At first I was like, how am I going to find guests? I don't know how to do this. Like, I know how to talk to people, but I don't know like how to do the show. And then I found, just from Googling stuff, I found different ways to find guests. And now guests find me. And I'm like, you're finding me now? This is so cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the same. Sometimes I get an email from a previous guest and they say, I think I got a great guest for your podcast. Okay, perfect. Let's talk to him or her.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's so interesting talking to people because like I said, you can go for people around the world. And so it's super cool. And I've had people that from Australia. So I've had to be like, okay, so we have to work outside of my regular time that I do interviews because you are the opposite side completely.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. We had to work out something different than normal, which was fine. And I thought it was so cool because, you're willing to work with me to try and figure that out.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm afraid we can talk for hours about all those subjects, Randy.
Probably.
And I'm really enjoying our conversation. But I'm looking at the time, and I want to ask you 2 more questions, if I may.
Shoot.
If there's anything from your experience as being an entrepreneur that you could, or following your passion, that you could share with the audience, like being a tip or a little piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Don't give up and be flexible. So a lot of people, where I live, small business is what runs our economy in this region. And a lot of them start, but they just kind of give up. And so first and foremost, you have to know that it's going to take time before you ever make any money. So don't give up. I talked to one person in particular, he's in my business group, and he's very, very successful now, but he goes, for 5 years, I didn't make money. He goes, but now he's a very thriving business, which is fantastic. And then being flexible is you have to be able to change with the economy. You have to be able to change with what you thought might be what your calling was, or how you thought your business was going to run. Maybe all of a sudden, like with COVID, everything had to change. I mean, where I was, we were shut down for nearly 2 years. And so we had to change a lot of the ways and systems that were used. So just being flexible and open to new ideas and different things is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And it reminds me of a quote that I once saw, that a winner is just a loser who tried it one more time.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So if people want to connect with you or follow you, Randy, how can they do that?
Yeah, definitely do it. So I'm on Facebook at RB Writing, and YouTube, obviously, Write or Die Show. As well, I am on Instagram, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh, and on TikTok at Randi-Lee Bowslaugh.
Nice. I really loved the conversation, Randy. I wish you all the best with your latest book, of course. I hope it will be an inspiration for many. And thanks for being my guest again. And let's stay in touch.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
I hope you liked this episode. Make sure to check out the other episodes, because each one is filled with interesting and inspiring stories and energy. Are you following your passion as well and make a good living out of it? Contact me and you could be my next guest. Would you like to follow your passion but are not there yet? Check out my website millionairelifestrategy.com and book an appointment to discover what I could do for you. Don't forget to share the podcast with your friends so that they get inspired as well.